Hey everyone! Welcome back to our channel. Here we learn new ideas and improve our English at the same time through stories. You practice English without feeling like you're studying. So let us start. Nobody can prepare you for India. I want to say that clearly at the beginning because I had tried to prepare. I had read things, watched documentaries, spoken to people who had been there, and I felt reasonably ready. I was not ready, not even slightly. And I don't mean that as a complaint. I mean it as the most honest thing I can tell you about a country that refuses, from the very first second, to let you experience it from a comfortable distance. The airport in Delhi is modern and clean and could belong to any city in the world. I walked through it feeling fine, feeling prepared, feeling like a person with a plan. Then the doors at the exit slid open and the outside air came in, and everything changed immediately. Heat first, a thick, warm weight that lands on you rather than surrounds you. Then smell, which is impossible to describe as a single thing because it is 20 things at once. Spices and exhaust, and something sweet and something smoky, and the general warm smell of a city of 30 million people living their lives outdoors. Then noise and movement, both arriving together, inseparable. A crowd of drivers holding signs and calling out. A man who appeared beside me from nowhere and took hold of my bag handle with a friendly smile and complete confidence, already walking, assuming I would follow. 3 taxi drivers speaking to me simultaneously from different directions, none of them waiting for an answer before continuing. I had not yet moved 10 meters from the door. I sorted myself out eventually, found my pre-booked driver, apologized to the man with my bag who accepted the apology gracefully and without resentment, and got into a car. The drive into the city took nearly an hour, and I spent most of it with my face close to the window because the traffic outside was doing things I had never seen traffic do before. There are lanes painted on the roads in Delhi, but they function more as vague suggestions than actual instructions. Cars, motorbikes, auto rickshaws, which are small 3-wheeled vehicles that buzz through gaps like insects, buses, bicycles, pedestrians, and at one point a dog, all sharing the same road space with a fluency that looked chaotic from outside, but seemed to operate by some internal logic I couldn't quite access. My driver used his horn constantly, but not in the way horns are used back home, where a horn means anger or warning. Here it was communication, a way of saying, I am here, I am passing, be aware of me, and everyone understood it and responded accordingly. Nobody seemed annoyed. It was a language, and everyone on the road spoke it. Then we passed a cow standing completely still in the middle of the road, not at the side, not moving through it. Standing in the center of a busy street with the absolute stillness and confidence of something that has decided it is not going anywhere and is not interested in your schedule. Traffic moved around it on both sides without slowing significantly, without honking at it, without anyone leaning out a window to express an opinion. In India, cows are sacred animals, respected and left in peace, and so the city simply flowed around it the way a river flows around a rock. My driver did not glance at it. I watched it through the back window until it disappeared from view, and I still wasn't entirely sure what I had just seen. The next morning, I went to Old Delhi, the ancient part of the city that has been continuously busy for hundreds of years and shows no sign of slowing down. The main market street there is called Chandni Chowk, one of the oldest and most densely crowded markets in all of Asia, and walking into it felt like stepping into something that had its own weather. Narrow lanes branching off in every direction, thousands of people moving through them, Shops on both sides selling things stacked from floor to ceiling with barely any space between the products and the street. Electronics, fabric, wedding decorations, street food, religious items, toys, tools, all of it existing within meters of each other, in a system that made complete sense to everyone who grew up in it, and almost no sense to me. I found the spice market by following my nose, which sounds like something from a story but is literally what happened. The smell changed as I walked deeper into a particular lane, shifting from general market smell to something concentrated and powerful and extraordinary. The spice market has large open sacks, standing along both sides of the narrow corridor, each one filled to the top with a different spice. Deep red chili powder, bright yellow turmeric, pale green cardamom seeds, dark cloves, cinnamon bark in curled sticks, black pepper in rough heaps. The colors alone were worth the walk. The smell was so strong in places that my eyes watered, and I had to stop and breathe through my mouth for a moment, which the vendors found gently amusing. One of them invited me to sit down for chai. Chai is spiced milk tea that is drunk everywhere in India throughout the day, made with black tea boiled together with milk and spices like ginger and cardamom and sometimes cloves, then sweetened with sugar and served in a small glass or clay cup. I sat on a low wooden stool outside his shop, and he brought out 2 small glasses, and we drank together. His English was partial, and my Hindi, which is the main language spoken in northern India, was completely non-existent, but we managed a conversation anyway, in the way that people do when they genuinely want to talk to each other. He had been in this market for 30 years. His father had been here before him. His son worked 3 stalls down. He said this without any particular sentiment, just as a fact about how his life was shaped, and there was something in the simplicity of it that I found quietly impressive. 3 generations in the same lane of the same market in the same city, a life with very clear roots. I took the train from Delhi to Jaipur on day 3. Jaipur is the capital of the state of Rajasthan in northern India and is known as the Pink City because the buildings of its old center are painted in a warm terracotta shade that was originally applied in 1876 to welcome a visiting British royal and has simply stayed ever since. The train journey takes around 4 hours, and I had a window seat, which I considered a small personal victory. The seat next to mine was occupied by a woman traveling with her husband and 2 children. And within about 15 minutes of the train moving, she opened a large tiffin box, which is a traditional Indian stacked metal container used to carry home-cooked food, and began distributing its contents to her family. Then she looked at me and held out a portion without asking whether I wanted any, in the tone of someone who has decided the matter already and is simply being efficient about it. I tried to decline politely because it felt like taking food from a family on a journey. She said something firm in Hindi that needed no translation. I accepted the food. It was rice and a thick lentil dish called dal and a small portion of vegetable curry. All of it clearly cooked that morning, and all of it tasted completely different from any Indian food I had eaten at restaurants back home. Warmer in flavor, more complex, with a depth that comes from someone cooking something they have made 1,000 times and know completely. Her husband asked me where I was from. The children stared at me with a frank, open curiosity that only children can get away with. And we talked, for most of the journey, in a mixture of English and gestures, and the universal language of pointing at things and nodding. When we arrived at Jaipur station, they gathered their bags and said goodbye with a warmth that felt entirely genuine, and I stepped onto the platform, feeling more welcome than I had felt at any hotel or hostel the entire trip. Jaipur's old walled city is extraordinary to walk through, especially in the afternoon when the sun is lower and the light hits those pink terracotta walls at an angle that makes them glow almost orange. I walked without a fixed route, which, in a city like this, means you will get lost, which I did, thoroughly, within about 30 minutes of entering the lanes behind the main bazaar. The streets narrowed and turned and doubled back, and I stopped recognizing any landmarks, and my phone map was confused by the density of the old city's layout. I stood at a junction of 3 identical-looking lanes, trying to work out which one went forward and which ones went sideways. A boy appeared beside me. He looked about 10 years old, school uniform slightly dusty, no bag. He looked at me, looked at the lanes, looked back at me with an expression that communicated clearly that my situation was obvious and he had assessed it already. Then he simply started walking down one of the lanes and glanced back once to check I was following. I followed. He led me through 4 or 5 turns that I could not have navigated alone, each one looking exactly like the last to my eyes but clearly distinct to his. And then we came out onto the wide main street of the old city, and he stopped. I turned to thank him and reached for some coins, but he was already walking back the way we had come, disappearing into the lane without looking back, without waiting for anything. Just a small person who saw someone lost and sorted it out, and then went back to whatever he had been doing before. I stood there for a moment after he was gone, feeling something that was somewhere between grateful and humbled, and unable to explain exactly why that small moment affected me more than many of the larger things I had seen. I tried to buy a piece of printed fabric at a textile market later that afternoon. Jaipur is famous for its block-printed fabrics, which are made by pressing carved wooden blocks dipped in dye onto cloth, creating traditional repeating patterns by hand. The vendor named a price. It seemed reasonable to me, perhaps even cheap compared to what something similar would cost at home, and I reached for my money immediately. The vendor's expression shifted in a way I didn't expect. Not offended exactly, but something close to disappointed, the way a person looks when a game they were looking forward to ends before it begins. A woman browsing at the next stall caught my eye and shook her head at me slowly with a small smile, the universal gesture of someone watching a beginner make a beginner's mistake. Haggling in India is not about being aggressive or trying to cheat anyone. It is a social exchange, a ritual with its own rhythm and rules, expected by both sides and enjoyed by many as a form of conversation and connection. Paying the first price without negotiating is not efficient. It is rude in a way, like skipping straight to the end of a conversation. I tried again at the next stall, offered a lower price, the vendor countered. I went slightly higher. He came slightly lower. We arrived somewhere in the middle, and he wrapped my purchase with a satisfaction that seemed genuine and had nothing to do with the money itself. I walked away, understanding something small but real about how exchange works in this part of the world. Varanasi is the last place I went, and the hardest one to describe. It is one of the oldest cities on earth, sitting on the western bank of the Ganges River, which is the sacred river of Hinduism, the religion followed by the majority of India's people. Hindus believe the Ganges is holy, and that bathing in it washes away sins, and that dying in Varanasi and being cremated on its banks brings liberation from the cycle of rebirth. Because of this belief, the city has been continuously inhabited and continuously sacred for somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 years, longer than most civilizations have existed at all. I arrived in the late afternoon and walked down to the Ghats, which are the wide stone steps that descend from the city down to the river's edge, stretching along the bank for several kilometers. What I found there was something I could not have imagined from any description. Pilgrims bathing in the river with complete devotion, cupping the water in their hands and lifting it toward the sun. Priests performing rituals with fire on platforms above the steps. Laundry spread out to dry on the warm stone. Children playing. Sadhus, which are Hindu holy men who have given up ordinary life to pursue spiritual practice, sitting in contemplation, wearing orange robes. Flower offerings floating out onto the water, small flames burning inside them. Smoke rising from the cremation area further down the bank where funeral pyres burned openly, quietly, with families gathered around them in grief and acceptance. All of it happening simultaneously, all of it completely visible, none of it hidden or separated from the ordinary activity around it. Life and death and prayer and laundry and children laughing, all on the same steps at the same time. I sat down on the warm stone and stayed for a long time, not photographing, not writing anything down, just watching and letting it be exactly what it was. I woke before sunrise on my last morning in Varanasi and walked back down to the river in the dark. A man with a small wooden rowing boat offered to take me out onto the water for the sunrise. We went out from the bank slowly, the oars quiet in the still water, and turned to face the city from the river's perspective. The sky was dark blue above, and the Ghats were mostly still. Just a few early figures moving on the steps, the first fires being lit, the first bells beginning to ring from somewhere inside the city above. Then the lie started. Not quickly, not dramatically, just the slow, reliable arrival of another morning in a city that has seen several million of them. The sky changed color from dark blue to something lighter, and then to pale gold at the horizon. And then the sun came over the far bank, and the whole river caught it at once, the water turning from dark to deep, orange to gold. The city on the bank glowing, bells ringing more clearly now, voices beginning, smoke rising in thin white lines from the Ghats into the cool air. I sat in that small boat on the holiest river in India and watched the oldest city on earth wake up, and I understood, in a way I don't think I could put into the right words, why people have been coming here for thousands of years. Not because it is beautiful, though it is, in a raw and complicated way. Not because it is comfortable or easy, because it is neither of those things, but because it is honest, because Varanasi makes no effort to hide what life is or what it contains. Birth and death and faith and chaos, and the river running through all of it, the same water it has always been, carrying everything to the sea. I flew home 2 days later. On the plane, I tried to write down what the week had felt like, and I kept stopping because nothing I wrote was close enough. India does not fit neatly into words. It fits into your senses and your memory, and the quiet moments after you get home when you are doing something ordinary and something reminds you, a smell or a sound or a particular quality of light, and you are briefly back there again, standing in a spice market with watering eyes, eating food from a stranger's tiffin box on a moving train, following a small boy through lanes you could not read, grateful for someone who could, sitting on ancient stone steps watching the river hold everything without judgment. I had tried to prepare for India. Next time I will know better than to try. All right. If you made it through this session today, that already says something about your discipline. This repetition and consistency combination might look boring on paper, but it is one of the most powerful ways to build fluent, natural English. Keep showing up like this, and your brain will slowly adapt. Trust the process. If this helped even a little, consider liking the video or subscribing. It lets me know these sessions are actually making a difference. We'll catch up again soon. Take care till then.